Hello, Ripple World. How's everybody doing? So nice to see you all. And I thought I would spend some time today talking a little bit about our brains and telling you a little story, actually, a few stories. I'm kind of known in my world for my storytelling because a lot of my stories start with the expression, "Did I tell you about the time I almost died?" And I know it sounds really dramatic, but I have a kind of brain that takes me to those thoughts really, really quickly. So I have lots of stories where my brain in a moment will all of a sudden tell me, "Oh my goodness, you almost died right there." So I have a number of times. One time I was hiking and a deer came out of the bush and I was by myself. And of course, I thought it was a ferocious bear ready to eat me. And it was just a beautiful deer. But I thought I almost could have died. The time I was going down a snow hill in one of those inner tubes and kind of got launched off the hill and got caught by a net. And but in my mind for a moment there I was going to go down the hill and get hit by a train coming down the other side. It was miles away, but to my brain it was right in front of me. What other times? Oh, there was a time my barrette snapped and hit my head. And for a split second, I thought, oh, that's it. My brain has snapped. That's what they talk about when they say, the person's brain snapped. So I have lots and lots of stories like that. They're just endless. It's unbelievable to think about how many times I've thought about that, I've almost died. But here I am, have not died from any of those things, but I do have a brain that likes to go to the worst case scenario. It's kind of what we call stinking thinking or catastrophic thinking. Like just for a split second, my brain will go right to the absolute worst case possible scenario. And if I pay attention and I catch it, it's actually, they make for really funny stories. And thankfully, I found a way to just notice it and notice that, that's just what my brain does. And it is actually just a story that my brain's telling me. But it's wrong. That's oftentimes very, very wrong. In fact, I don't think there's a real time I could tell you that I really got really close to I almost died. Um, it just hasn't really happened to that degree. But that I have a brain that does that is important for me to know because I can really pay attention and notice when it's doing that because what it tells me is that something about my world is giving me cues of danger that something really scary has happened or is going to happen. And that's important for us to pay attention to for a few different reasons so that we can really help our bodies and our brains know that whether this situation is really dangerous or whether it's just, a situation we might need to bring some attention to, like maybe I probably am not the best person to be going down a ice hill in an inner tube um, when I can't control it. That's probably not the best thing for my brain and my body. It's the same reason I don't go on roller coasters. So sometimes we just need to check out what's going on in our world and help our bodies settle down, help our brains to settle our bodies down, and let the whole of us know it's actually really safe and we're okay and we're going to survive. Other times it's really important to know that because it might mean that there's something that's not being taken care of inside ourselves, that we might need a little bit of extra help or support or need to bring our loved ones a little closer so that we can feel a little more connected to people. So there's lots of different reasons to pay attention to what your brain does, and to notice what the patterns are, because we each and every one of us are unique beings, right? So our patterns are all going to be really unique to who we are. So knowing kind of what are the different parts of our brains that we all share, and what are the unique ways that your part of your brain and all those different parts kind of react, and what makes it react is really an important part of it's like a life skill, something you really kind of need to know. Like it's really important to know how to take care of yourself, like get up and brush your teeth. And it's really important to know how to swim, in case you fall in water, right? So the knowing how our brains work is, in my mind, a life skill. And there's so many great things to learn about our brains now because really in the last like 25 years, we've got all these amazing scientists, neuroscientists, helping us to understand like we never have before the way our brains work. And one of my favorite neuroscientists, Dan Siegel, does a really fun way of understanding our brain by the hand model. So I'm going to share you what Dan says. So if you think about your hand, kind of like your brain, you always think about your forearm here. This is like your nervous system coming up your back through your spinal column, and it connects up here to this is like what we call the brain stem, and the inner part of your brain here, the most earliest part of our brains, like that have been around, in human history. It's the oldest part of the human brain, is here in the palm of our hand. It's what we call the reptile brain. You didn't know you had a reptile in your brain, did you? One of the things I like to do when working with kids is to have them name their reptile, because if you can name it, you can find a way to tame it, because that reptile is super, super important to us. We really need to have that part of our brain, because that's the part of our brain that's going to get us to safety way faster than all the other parts of our brain. So if you really, want to make sure your body and brain is safe, you really want to make sure you have a really good, strong, healthy reptile. But here's the thing. Sometimes in our world, we think things are more dangerous than they in fact are. We're not being chased by, tigers and bears and on a regular basis. It's just not a part of our brain we need very much these days. Now, with COVID, of course, you need that reptile to kind of be alert, so that, the reptile is able to make sure you stay safe and you don't kind of do the things that might make you kind of get sick or be, put yourself in situations that would be dangerous. We really want that reptile to kind of be there. But for the most part, in the day-to-day of world, we don't really need that reptile brain very much, but essential, because that reptile also keeps us breathing and our hearts pumping and our blood moving and keeps our temperature regulated. Such an important part of our brain that has to be there all the time, for sure. We want it there. But ideally, you kind of want it just to be a little quiet and kind of hang around in the background, just paying attention just in case we do need it, but not to be on all the time. Not in a way that makes us, act like, we're almost going to die. That's probably not very helpful. The next part of our brain that developed is, we're going to put the thumb inside there like that. That's what we call the mammalian brain. And you can kind of hear mammalian. There's a mammal part to that word, because that's the part of our brain that developed when we wanted to, as a species, take better care of our babies, live in communities, be able to kind of be close to people and learn who to trust. That mammalian part of our brain is kind of like such an important part of all of our emotional life, is to be there. So also a super important part of our brain, in terms of being a human and being connected to people. And then the last part of our brain that got developed is this part, which is what we call the cerebral cortex. And it kind of comes over everything. And that's what we call the big brain, or the upstairs brain. The brain that does all the really cool things that humans can do, like study brains, or create computers that I can talk to you through the internet like this, or kind of create a society that is, functioning as best we can in these kinds of conditions. That's all because this really cool cerebral cortex is there, part of our brain. Super important part of our brain too. In the front part of the cerebral cortex, so kind of like right up here, is what we call the prefrontal cortex. And I always like to add this part because it's a super important part for us to know, so that when we do things that are dangerous, like ride a bike, drive in a car, um, play hockey, all those kinds of things. And I know you think those aren't dangerous. I do those things all the time, but they could be. They always could be. And that's why we do things like wear helmets, and why it's so important to make sure your helmet comes down over this part of your brain, because that prefrontal cortex, that's the most you of your brain. This is who you are. Right here in front of your brain is your prefrontal cortex. So we really want to keep that part of you safe, because there's no other you in this world. So let's make sure we really keep that helmet on, keep those seat belts on. Let's protect those heads. Okay, so let's come back to our hand model of the brain. So got the spinal column coming up here, connects to our reptilian brain here. We've got our mammalian brain here, our cerebral cortex here, prefrontal cortex. Now, it's such a great way to live in our life when we have all parts of our brain fully active, fully healthy, and we can go through the world with our whole brain intact. But sometimes what happens, like my moments when I think I'm coming down an ice hill in a inner tube, and all of a sudden I think, oh my goodness, I might die. I flip my lid, which means I lose the part of my brain that's the mammalian part, kind of goes offline. I don't think about the, other people or anything else. It's all about, oh my goodness, I'm alone. This is really terrible. I'm not going to make it. And then my cerebral cortex kind of comes offline as well. It kind of stops working. So I'm not thinking, yeah, that train is really far down the road, and that there's a net going to catch me, and that I'm probably not really going to go down that other hill. It's that prefrontal cortex and my cerebral cortex is completely not available to me. So all that I got is this reptile, and that reptile is just saying, "You're gonna die. You're gonna die. You're gonna die." And so it's really hard in those moments when we kind of in that place, and we have to find ways to kind of settle our reptiles down and put them back to sleep. Now, as I was flying through the air and going to be caught by the nets, probably not the time my reptile is going to go back to sleep. But as soon as I was caught by the net, then I could go, whoa, there's all my friends. I'm okay. Oh, okay, there we go. And I could put my cerebral cortex back on and say, oh, that train's a really long way away, and I just got caught by this net, and I'm going to be all right. And then I had my whole brain. But for a split second there, I flipped my lid. and, and all that mattered was I had a reptile awake thinking it had to save me. And that's really great that I had that reptile. But after that moment's over, trying to notice how my body has reacted to that reptile getting woken up is an important thing, because I need to settle my heart down. Best way to do that, and everybody probably has told you, take a deep breath, take 10 deep breaths, try your breathing exercises. Super, super important way to learn how to calm down that upset reptile. Hand on your heart, and I always say skin to skin, because reptiles like skin, like humans like skin to skin contact. So hand on your heart. Your heart's probably beating a mile a minute if you've had a moment like that. So take good long deep breaths and good long out breaths. So less in than out, more out than in, right? So ooh, even just one breath like that, I can feel my shoulders drop. But try a few. There we go. You settle the heart down. And your belly's probably really upset, because in those moments, bellies get really upset. So we want to kind of another hand on our belly to settle the upset belly, but also to make sure we're taking our breath as deep down as our belly. There we go. So that's kind of ways that we can settle our body down. But we also have a brain, right? So our brain is probably doing a lot of storytelling. And sometimes the stories can get a little bit confused, especially in a moment when you thought you were going to die, or you had a really scary thought and it set your body off. That's what we call that. That's a state. Your body's in a state of fear. And when our bodies are in fear, it sends a message to our brains, and then our brain creates a story about that fear. So, but it's always your body first. You may not know that, because we think, as humans, we always think we're so smart. And there's many ways in which we're so smart. But the truth is, we're first a body. First here. Always body first. So start with your body. Start with the state of your body. Calm it down. And then you can calm down the story in your head. Because the stories, as my stories, my catastrophic stories tell you, my stories are, I almost died. Did I ever tell you about the time I almost died? And so it really believes, my brain really believes in those moments, my body that says this was a super scary moment. So kind of having to backtrack and help your brain learn the story that your body got activated, got upset. It got into a state of fear. But we can actually calm that down with our breathing. And when we can calm it down with our breathing, we can calm down our body state, and we can actually tell ourselves the story, the true story about what actually really happened. That your body got so afraid it thought it was going to die. And thank goodness we have these good, healthy bodies doing that great work. But our mind created a story about it. We don't always want to believe the story because sometimes it's kind of taken us down the wrong path. There's no tigers. All right. I look forward to talking to you again because I have some more stuff to share about brains with you. Take care.